My unhinged neighbors just keep digging themselves into a deeper hole. Posted by I Had 4 Biscuits. Get ready, this one's wild. So, I've been in my current home for about a year and a half now. It's a duplex in a series of duplexes. The problem neighbors have a yard that is adjacent to ours. It's uphill and basically looks into our yard. The front door also looks right into their backyard. Previously, some young 20-somethings lived there, threw quite a few parties and grew drugs, but we never had any problem with any of that as long as they were respectful of their volume late at night, which they generally were. Those guys moved out about 6 months ago and a family moved in. I'll call them Mom, Dad, and their 5 kids. They also got a husky puppy shortly after moving in. The family started out extremely loud. At first, it was all good. The kids played loudly and that was fine. But we also heard a lot of screaming and fighting, but we didn't say anything. The dad also threw a couple of very loud temper tantrums that we tried to ignore. They included throwing garbage all over their yard, much of which went over the fence and onto our front porch. Nobody ever came to clean it up. I mean, we placed an errant shoe in the parking lot so someone could claim it. Then they got the dog, and I heard a lot of distressed noises from that puppy. I'm a husky owner myself, so I know they can be kind of dramatic, but the noises we were hearing were beyond husky drama. The dog was kept in a wire crate outside in an area with a lot of rain. They would let it out for maybe 30 minutes a day, but for the most part, I saw and heard that dog in its kennel all day long. I felt really bad for it, but I didn't feel like I had a good reason to call animal services. Well, one day, I walk out from my front door to take my own dog for a walk, and I witnessed a dad punch the puppy. I responded without thinking, "What the heck are you doing to that dog?" He responded that I was a nosy witch, can't a guy pop his own dog in his own yard? And then continued to make fun of me and yell about what a jerk I was. I felt sick to my stomach, and after a week of keeping a closer eye on the dog and not seeing it out of its kennel ever, I decided to call the Humane Society. I originally didn't because I was scared of these people. Guess I was right to think that. A few days later, the Humane Society shows up. I don't know what that all looked like, but another neighbor mentioned that they had seen them come through. I left again to walk my dog and found out that the mom was waiting for me around the corner. She first accused me of calling the Humane Society, which I tried to deflect, and I say that, well, a lot of neighbors were worried about the noises that the dog had been making, which is true, and again, I was afraid of this family. She started by apologizing for her husband calling me a witch, but then she went off about how where she comes from, people don't settle things by calling the authorities. She started screaming at me about not knowing what she's been through and that I don't pay her bills. This whole time, I'm telling her over and over, I don't care what she or her family does. I just couldn't sit back and watch the dog get abused. She says, I didn't hit the freaking dog. Dad had just walked up, so I pointed at him and I said, well, this jerk did. She then stood up and got in my face. She's a good foot taller and 100 pounds heavier than me and started screaming at me. I backed away and I said to leave me alone. Her husband says, looks like she's afraid for her life. Come on, let's go home. So I'm freaking out at this point, okay? This terrifying person just made moves to beat me up. I'm absolutely freaking out, but some of the other neighbors came out to help. My partner and I weigh calling the cops, concerned about the implications of that since this is a family of color, there are 5 kids, and so on. But ultimately, I figured that having a record of the incident, well, was a good idea. The cops come out, we file a report, talk to both parties, but basically say that unless we want to file a restraining order, there's nothing to do. So I find out who their property manager is, and I let them know what happened, to which they respond that they aren't allowed to have a dog, so they will start there. Not the point, but whatever. The next couple of days, we hear a lot of violent threats. Mom just sits in her backyard screaming things like, I want to see her bleed from her eyes, and that white supremacist will get what's coming. I am freaking out, but I avoid them. A few days later, Dad comes up banging on our door. My partner answers, and Dad said, our kid said that you've been looking over the fence and spying on us. My partner responds that, no, we absolutely have no interest in that. However, we are in extremely close quarters and we do see into their yard. But hey, thanks for coming by to talk about this. They have a long discussion where my partner describes our side of the story, that we do not want them to feel unwelcome because of their race and culture and so on, but we cannot tolerate violence or threats of violence. Dad seems to understand, and the conversation goes well for about 20 minutes. Dad says that the Humane Society actually gave him some really good advice for caring for his dog, and that he and his wife have a history of beating the crap out of each other, but they are trying to have a fresh start. After this conversation is going on for a while, Mom comes outside and starts screaming her head off at Dad for sympathizing with the enemy. She throws her shoes and keys at him and calls us all sorts of names. Dad apologizes, but it's clear that this is a very unstable person. We decide to start logging our encounters with this family. Fast forward a while. I'm getting occasional threats, but I'm just keeping my head down. I'm staying out of my yard, and I look at my feet when I go in and out my front door, and I carry pepper spray everywhere. We keep hearing fights, animal abuse, general violence, but we are fully afraid of these people and stay out of it. I see them getting in screaming fights with other neighbors as well. A few weeks ago, Mom is absolutely on one again. She's screaming about that white witch that called the cops and calling me all sorts of things, saying, "Oh, you'll see what happens, you'll get what you deserve." I work from home and absolutely cannot get my work done because she is just screaming about me, and I assumed someone else that I had to guess talked to her kids while she wasn't home. I eventually just can't take it anymore, and I say something like, "I am so tired. I'm just trying to do my job and all I hear is threats. I'm exhausted. Are you exhausted?" She responds by screaming over me, calling me every name in the book and saying, "How dare you talk to me over the fence," and all of that. I loudly play a stupid song about not being a bully and hide inside with the doors locked. This was obviously a bad idea. I cracked, and it was dumb. The next morning at 10 a.m., Mom plays a song with "FUB" as a repeated lyric. She screams as loud as she can along with the lyric and has her children, who are like 6 to 10 years old, scream it with her. Multiple other neighbors text me checking in and note that they are contacting their property management again. They suddenly have a pit bull along with the husky. The pit bull barks every time we are in our yard, going in and out of the house and so on. She happily declares, "Good boy, that's why I brought you here. Bark at the enemy." My partner goes up to the fence and tries to get the dog to smell him, so maybe it can get used to us, but she tells us to stay away from my dog. Alright, now, we're last Thursday at this point. I am leaving my house to walk my dog, and I get around the corner to find that she has followed me. I ask her to please leave me alone, and she responds that she's being evicted or something. I respond, "Hey, everyone here is just sick of hearing violent threats all the time. That's literally all we want." To which she responds, "Well, you should have thought about that before you talked to my kids when I wasn't home." Well, I told her I didn't do that, which I didn't. I've never said anything to these kids other than hello back to them. She says they specifically pointed me out to them, and I sent my partner to screw with their dog. I told her that we were just trying to get the dog to stop barking at us. I never talked to her kids, and again, all I want is a non-violent existence. And she punches me hard in the eye with her ring hand. She splits my eyebrow open. Remember, this woman is 100 pounds heavier and a foot taller than me, and obviously has a history of violence and fighting, and well, I don't. There's blood everywhere, and about 10 neighbors rush out saying that they saw and heard everything and start tending to me. They put pressure on the wound, call the cops, and bring me water. Meanwhile, Mom stands there for a while, making fun of me for crying, and then leaves. Neighbors mention that they have also called the Humane Society and property management on these people, and I'm just the one that got blamed and beat up for it. Cops don't come for a while, so I go to the hospital. I have to get 13 stitches on my eyebrow and top of my head, 2 CT scans for brain injuries and face injuries, and my eye is swollen shut. She screwed me up. So that brings us to now. Their eviction was moved up to yesterday, but I'm still terrified that they know where I live. Cops showed up the next morning, 13 hours after the incident, and got my statement. I left and camped out while they moved out, But I was told that they had more disputes and screaming matches with the other neighbors during this time, and screaming about their terrible neighbors that ruined their lives. Cops eventually came to arrest and charge her. I look like crap. I've missed quite a bit of work due to physical and emotional distress. I am pressing charges, but I don't know if I want to pursue a civil suit for damages since I don't think they have much money, and I don't want to screw over the lives of those kids anymore. I feel so terrible for them. They are going to grow up with this hatred boiling inside of them for the racist that screwed up their lives, when in reality, it's their mother's continuous violence that caused these problems. And the cycle will continue. I really hope that I am wrong and that these kids will break the cycle. It's not racist to sue people who punch you and cause you to end up in the hospital. Great comment. I feel terrible for the kids too, but these parents need to pay for their crimes and what they did. There's no excuse for the way they acted. Sorry you had to go through this, OP, and I hope that you get the justice you deserve. This story contains one of the worst Karens I've ever read about on this channel. I'm not even kidding. It's called Entitled Roommate and Landlord Put Me Through Heck. Get ready and buckle up. It's a wild ride. I, then 20, now 21, am autistic, have memory problems, and at the time worked a full-time job as a cashier and made enough money to want to move closer to work. As I was scrolling through posts, I found one about a family with a giant house looking for a roommate. The family was basically a man, woman, a daughter, and the man's father. The rent was cheap, it looked amazing, and the description was perfect for me. I quickly texted, and my first question was about pets, as I have an emotional support dog. Long story short, I met them and set my boundaries, stating that if they accept me, that I wanted them to know that I am sensitive to yelling and violence due to my autism and PTSD. They were fine with it and stated that, just like normal people, they had small arguments, but they kept it in the confines of their private room, which turned out to be a lie. I ended up living with them for about 6 months, and this is what made me leave. After moving in, it seemed okay at first, until the man and woman, who was a couple, would have screaming fights in the shared living room where I could hear everything in my bedroom. And then the man, who was technically the landlord but didn't work and made small money online, became a drunk. He drank every night, which at first I was okay with because it didn't bother me, but then he began to get violent when drunk. His first suspiciously violent outburst I noticed when he lifted the dining room table and kept on moving it while drunk. I was making Christmas letters at the table at the time and had to stop and continue the next day because I couldn't work like that. He was laughing, so I was a little shaken, but not in fear of my life. After that, he announced that he was quitting drinking as he noticed it was affecting those around him, which outside I told him congratulations, and inside I was relieved. I felt safer knowing an outburst wouldn't happen again. Boy, was I wrong. A week later, he started drinking more than ever. It was just after Christmas, and I was baking in the kitchen for a Christmas party at a coworker's and friend's place. The household knew ahead of time that I was going to be baking. The plan was, the coworkers pick me up that night with the desserts, spend the night, and then enjoy the party the next day. Before I got started baking, I noticed that the only brown sugar in the house was hard, and I understand that you can still use hard brown sugar, but I figured I can buy some on my own since my coworkers have texture problems like I do, so I didn't want to risk them biting a chunk of brown sugar, and it was no problem since I had to go to the store to get something else anyways. So I told the man that I was walking to the store for brown sugar. It was a 2-minute walk, and then left. I came back a few minutes later. He says, "I was trying to tell you before you left that we have brown sugar here." And I say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you, but I know, I just wanted to get some that wasn't hard." "You can still use it if it's hard." "I know, I just wanted some that wasn't." "That's just a waste of money." "I know, but it's my money to waste." Just to let everyone reading know, I never used anyone else's money for any food or anything while I lived there. If I wanted something, I bought it myself, even if it would end up being shared between everyone. And then the woman who was dating the man said to the man, "Babe, if she wants to buy stuff herself, she can, it's her money." Then the man huffed, and I got to baking. As I was baking, the man kept drinking. The man, woman, me, and our new roommate who just moved in approximately a month prior was there. I was getting all my baking stuff around when I noticed the sugar was on the counter behind the man's chair. The man was not in his chair. I assumed he got up to go get something, so I walked over and went to gently move his chair just an inch to the side. His chair was a desk chair with wheels so that I could grab the sugar, and when the man suddenly jumped into his chair, sitting down and blocking me from reaching the sugar. I looked at him, stunned for a moment because he came out of nowhere, and I noticed he was already drunk. I say, excuse me, but could I get the sugar? I don't know, can ya? I was talking softly and carefully throughout the conversation as I knew he was drunk. Well, your chair is blocking me. Could I please get the sugar? Why don't you just push me aside like you always do? That made me confused. What? I'm not pushing you. You were going to. You could ask and not be rude. I'm sorry, but I wasn't going to push you. I was only gently moving your chair to get some sugar. You were going to shove me. That's rude. I just wanted to end the conversation and beg. I'm sorry. Can you please allow me to get the sugar? I don't know. You were going to push me. The woman says, babe, just let her get the sugar. It's just right there. Then he scooted the chair so I could get the sugar, and then I started baking. As I was baking, the man drank more. The man talking to me said, you like to shove people around, don't you? Wait, what? You know you shoved me aside without a word before. Wait, no, what? Honestly, I was confused at this. I hadn't remembered ever shoving him, ever. Just over there, pointing to the dishwasher, you shoved me to get past before and you didn't apologize or anything. Honestly, the kitchen was extremely small. I don't remember ever shoving him or bumping into him, but with how small the kitchen was, it was likely that I accidentally bumped into him at one point in the past and I didn't notice. Oh, I don't remember, but I'm sorry if I did. Oh, I remember everything. It was about a month after you moved in or so. I was standing near the dishwasher in the sink when you passed me by and you shoved me, without a single word of apology. I'm sorry, I don't remember that, as I have memory problems, but if it happened, then it was an accident, and I apologize. He then huffed, and I was left to baking more. I was confused as to why he'd mentioned something that may have happened 5 months prior. Honestly, after that, some details for a while I can't remember, as it's all a blur since I tried not to acknowledge what was going on around me. So skip maybe 20 to 30 minutes after that. I was sitting in the dining room and kitchen with the man, the woman, and the new roommate still there, and I was waiting for the cookies to cool before putting them into the cookie tin that I had so that the cookies didn't stick together. The main things I remember is the man kept drinking and getting frustrated over nothing, even getting annoyed to where with my last batch of cookies, he started grabbing them and throwing them into my tin without letting them cool even when the woman was trying to stop him, saying, babe, stop, her cookies are still cooling. But he wouldn't listen. One of the cookies broke, and since he seemed interested in the cookies, I decided to be nice and offer him the broken one to try. He smiled, took the cookie, and threw it away in the trash can behind him. I ignored everything, hoping time would pass faster, waiting for my coworkers to pick me up. The back door was connected to the kitchen, so I just stayed in the kitchen, waiting as I planned to go out the back door to my coworker's car, and I didn't want to go upstairs to my room as I didn't trust the man with my desserts. I was afraid he would break them while I was gone. So I sat on my phone to distract my brain from everything going on. Again, this part is blurry since I was distracting myself from what was going on, but I remember feeling scared and just trying not to think about that feeling. But the man started to argue with our new roommate over literally nothing. Our roommate stayed calm and kept seated while the man stood up, asking the roommate if he wanted to fight. The main thing I remember is the man standing up, yelling, and saying something like, "You're no good, don't pay rent." The roommate has not paid rent, which was agreed on before he moved in until he got a stable job, and waste space. I deserve better. We deserve better. The woman's daughter deserves better. She deserves so much better. The sentence about the woman's daughter made no sense. She lives with us, but no one had even mentioned her, and the roommate wasn't even part of the woman's daughter's life. The roommate, calm and still sitting down, says, "Man, I know. No one has even mentioned her. I know I don't pay rent. I will pay once I'm able to get out of this slump, which you agreed to when I moved in." The man, still standing and yelling, says, "Well, I don't agree to it now. You get out of my house. The woman's daughter deserves better than you." The woman, while holding the man's arm, "Babe, sit down. No one has even mentioned her. I don't know what's gotten into you." My roommate, still sitting calmly, says, "If you want me out, I'll get out, but you gotta talk to me calmly, man. I don't plan on not paying you, and you know this. You don't need to act as if I'm just against you all the time. I don't understand your problem with me." "My problem?" the man shouts. "My problem is you not being able to pay frickin' rent and her," pointing to me, "shoving people aside." At this point, my brain only comprehended me being mentioned, so I just looked up from my phone and said, "Huh?" "Yeah, you two," pointing back and forth between me and him, "are in cahoots, aren't you? You plan on both not paying and running off somewhere cheap." Honestly, I had, and still have, no idea where that came from. I hardly spoke 2 words to the new roommate, and I hardly knew his name, and we never even texted each other. The only time we ever really talked was to trade Pokemon on Pokemon Go. Plus, I always paid rent, even paying ahead of time, and I was never late and never said that I wouldn't pay. Wait, what? We barely talk or know each other. Bullcrap. You two plan on teaming up together and leaving us in the dust with no income. I know it. I'm smarter than you think I am. I have a college freaking degree. At that point, I just didn't respond, and I went back in my phone to distract my brain from everything going on because I was afraid of what was going to happen if I responded or cried. Roommate replies, "Man, chill. Nothing's going on. OP's just minding her own business, and we hardly know each other. Why would we go and try to go against you? Why do you think all men are against you? Does my existence threaten you? Does it bother you that there's another man in the house? You are against me. You want to fight like a real man? Come on, you and your crappy tattoos, get up now and fight me." The man was standing even closer to the roommate, but roommate didn't seem to mind. He didn't seem to want to agitate the situation. Roommate replies, "Man, I'm not going to get up and I'm not going to fight you." Now this is a part that I saw because it was literally out of nowhere. The roommate put his bottle of alcohol on his mouth to take a sip, and the man smacked the roommate's bottle out of his mouth, making his mouth bleed. Alcohol splattered everywhere and onto me, and then I looked at roommate and saw his mouth bleeding. I looked at him with concern because, well, his mouth was bleeding. The roommate, "Oh man, why'd you do that? God, my mouth is bleeding." The man, seeing me looking at roommate, "See, you're in cahoots. Why do you care about the moochin' broke bee so much?" "He's hurt. His mouth is bleeding." "I'm okay," roommate says. "It's just a small cut, but man, that was uncalled for. What did I do to deserve that?" Then I can't remember much after that, but I do remember, very shortly after, I know that I needed to get out of the house immediately because I feared for my life. It got to where I was so scared that my legs felt like jelly and my trauma was coming back to me. I got up to go where some of my desserts were so I could take them outside when the man shouts, "Where do you think you're going?" My feet paused, and I turned to see the man started walking a few steps toward me in a threatening way. I was afraid of what he was going to do to me. I thought I'd be hit, or worse, but I didn't know what to do or even say. And then the roommate called out to the man, distracting him from me. "Hey, let her go. She's getting away from here like a reasonable person. You let her go." Then the roommate gave me a look that seemed to say, "I got this. You go." So I gathered all my things and ran out the back door and started on the back door steps trying to figure out what to do since I didn't feel safe. A few minutes went by as I was texting my coworkers, telling them everything and asking about bringing my dog and staying with them for a bit. Then I heard voices coming from the front porch. I listened in to make sure it wasn't the man's voice, and it was roommate's voice. I ran to the voice, afraid of what happened, and then I saw cop cars. "Hey, what's going on?" The roommate said, "OP, you okay? I called the cops because of that bee assaulting me. You hanging in there?" Then I just said, "Thank you," and bursted a cry of relief. I felt safe outside where the police were, and I was glad to see roommate was okay. Then roommate held out his arms, and I cried for a while as he was telling me, "It's okay, you're safe, he's not going to hurt you," and I just kept on repeating, "Thank you," over and over. It seemed roommate got done with the police mainly, but I could see woman and man spying through the glass of the front door, with them saying, "OP is there, what's she doing there?" I felt scared to step in there. The police asked if we had a place to stay, and roommate said he was unsure of what to do long term, but he could find some place overnight, but his stuff was in the house. I told the police that I was going to leave and not live with them again because I felt unsafe. The police agreed and talked to the man and woman and told them that they are to let us grab our stuff and everyone decide what to do in the future later. After the police left, I went inside to grab my dog because I was afraid they were going to hurt her. I grabbed my dog, and as I was leaving with her out the back door, the man kept on trying to say that I didn't need to leave and that it was all roommate's fault, and that B is no good and running a perfectly good thing. I sat outside with my dog and my stuff, and my coworker picked me up, and I cried until I reached their place. I felt sick and dizzy. I felt dehydrated but nauseous all at the same time. We got to their house, and my friends helped me up the stairs and onto the floor as I was so dizzy I just needed to lie down. It's really hard to describe the feeling. Like everything was a dream, but it repeated in my head over and over. The more that it repeated, the more I cried, and the more I cried, the more I felt like I was just going to faint. I had one of the friends there and take my phone away from me because man and woman were blowing it up, telling me to not move and that I over-exaggerated the situation by leaving, even going so far as accusing me of being with roommate. And also, when I told them I was leaving permanently, the man tried telling me that I was too young and irrational to make a decision and not mature enough. Long story short, after I calmed down, I got sick. I got really sick. I've never been so sick in my life. I made a deal to have 3 days to leave, cause in 3 days I'd have to pay the next month's rent. I spent the time working while sick, while broke, and while living with my coworkers while finding a place to live. Eventually, another coworker who knew of my situation sent me a link to an apartment for rent that I moved into on the deadline. I moved out with help from my mother, stepdad, and amazing friends. Admittedly, I was living off of $3 for a bit, but taxes came in and I was on my feet in no time and now live happily and also got a second dog to keep my emotional therapy dog company. About 2 or 3 weeks later, the man in the woman's house burnt down. Did they do it themselves because they couldn't afford it without my rent? Who knows, but it was either that or righteous karma. An update. I'm not sure about roommate, honestly. The day after the incident, the man was texting me trying to say I overreacted and saying that roommate went back and apologized for the situation, so why am I making this harder and not coming back? So far as I know, he went back, but I don't think he was there the day of the fire. And yeah, with the brown sugar, I really didn't have time for that, so I just got a new one which was faster. This takes the cake for one of the most insane stories I have read about neighbors to date, and I am so thankful that OP is in a good place and that I have never had to experience this myself. This is mental. What do you think? There are no words to describe this insanity. I thought we were just being paranoid. Lesson learned. Trust your gut. Posted by Wadia729. So, my husband and I thought we were just overthinking the situation, but no, we were right all along. We bought our first and current home just over 2 years ago. We were so excited to get into a house and were really looking forward to getting out of apartment living. But it has turned out to be a complete disaster. It started with the neighbors behind us. They were mowing 8 feet over the lot line, and they have a 120-pound Husky Lab and German Shepherd mix who they let out with no fence, tether, or leash. After he charged at our 4-pound puppy, the wife had to wrestle the dog to the ground, the husband just went inside, we had a fence installed. Very long story short, the fence ticked them off beyond belief because children should be able to play wherever. Except never once did we see their kids out back. We thought the fence would be the end of it, but you know where this is going. Now, they ram our fence with their lawnmower whenever they can and throw trash over the fence into our property. We couldn't figure out where their hostility was coming from until I heard the wife talking to her mom or mother-in-law about us. They don't even have kids. They took that house from a family who deserves it. Just a note, our house is a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom, and is just under 1,100 square feet. This is not a home built for kids, but it's just the right fit for us, our dog, and 2 cats. We thought this was just them and not the attitude of everyone around us. But then I started hearing whispers, upper Midwest whispering that you are absolutely supposed to hear, from some neighborhood parents about the same thing. They don't have kids, they don't belong here. Again, this was like the same 3 sets of parents who all have kids the same age who play together. A few entitled parents who judge me for not being a mother is nothing new, and most parents don't give a crap if you tell them you don't have or want kids, so whatever. This goes on for a while, and we just wrote it off as a few bad eggs. Then, a couple of weeks ago, my husband and I were sniping at each other while carrying in groceries from the car. As we're putting the groceries away and laughing, the cops show up at our door. Where we live, we have very strict domestic violence laws, so usually someone gets arrested if the cops get a domestic call. It was pretty obvious that no one was at risk of anything, and I go back inside. We immediately pull up the live feed from our Ring cam and catch the cops' conversation. Officer says, yeah, this was nothing. If my neighbors called the office every time my wife and I snapped at each other, they'd be over every day. Sergeant says, this was a huge waste of our time. I'm going to go over and talk to the caller. We never should have been called. I'm so tired of coming into this neighborhood. We see the sergeant walk over across the street, and we couldn't hear what he said, but it was pretty obvious he was less than happy with the neighbors who called. The husband started shouting, "We have kids. They shouldn't have to listen to this." And the sergeant said something that shut him up and wrote a ticket, which turned out to be a ticket for a false report. We were very upset about the cops being called to our home. We knew how close we came to one of us getting arrested over nothing. We talked to our next door neighbor, who we love and who is getting their house ready to sell. She said, yeah, I wasn't going to say anything because my ex-husband and I had issues with this same group for years and we didn't want to get involved. But there's a group of parents who talk about you guys all the time and are working together to get you to leave. They think you shouldn't be living in this neighborhood since you don't have kids. We had issues with them because my ex-husband is black and the neighbors didn't want black kids running around the neighborhood. The cops used to be called all the time when our kids were playing outside, so the cops know about the parents on this street. Now, they write tickets every time they're called to the neighborhood, and it turns out to be nothing. We could not believe it. Confirmation that there really is a mommy mafia conspiracy that's out to get us, and they are super racist to boot. Later that day, we were on our way back to our house from a dog walk and saw the guy who called the cops on us talking to our next door neighbor, and she was flipping her crap on him. I've told you over and over to not call the cops about every little thing. I have black kids who have black friends, and the last thing I need is a dead kid because of you. You can take your BLM sign and shove it up your butt. You called over nothing. My kids could have been hurt. We don't know what to do at this point. We're surrounded by really mean, racist parents who, apparently, are going to constantly call the cops on us until they run us out. We just had an incident this morning. We caught the neighbors behind us letting their huge dog into our fenced-in yard to poop. Full-on trespassing, opened our gate, and everything. My husband went out there and he got upset with them, and all they did was go inside without their dog. They just left him in our yard. My husband came inside, called animal control, and forwarded the Ring footage of them opening the gate to the same sergeant who came by our house on the domestic call. When the cops and the animal control showed up, the wife came up out back to try and sneak the dog back into the house and was caught by the cops in our yard. We don't know what happened after that and will hopefully get an update soon. Just what? This commenter has some pro advice for the OP. Says, dang, lock your gate for sure, and it sounds like you already have cameras, so that's good. If you can figure out some way to get this group to turn on one another, that would be your best bet. Get a burner phone and call on one of them saying you're one of the others in the group, or start a rumor about one spouse having an affair with one of the others. Of course, don't do that if you can just ignore them. I wish you could take it to the law or something to help yourself get out of this crazy situation with these terrible neighbors. I am sorry, OP. My neighbor attempted to break into my house and got away with it. Posted by Massive Formal 4870 with more info in the comments. This guy lives on the property behind my house in an RV. He has a history of snooping in windows and around properties in general from what my other neighbor says. Yesterday, he thought he was sneaking around unseen from our cameras, but we caught some of it. He came back to my house close to 10 times over 2 hours after we went to bed. He snooped around and then eventually came back with a mask and shot our guest window over 15 times with metal BBs. He also shattered our glass screen door. He spent quite a while yelling and fighting with imaginary people, Our neighbor said the guy's ex used to live in our house and thinks that she's hiding in our houses, so that's why he snoops. You can see him stalking and casing our house for days prior to this. And neighbors said she has tried to get him arrested for trespassing, but couldn't. Cops came out and took evidence and said our camera footage is not clear enough to make an arrest. They can tell it's him based off of stature, long hair, same clothes, and so on, but since the face isn't shown clearly before the mask was put on, there's nothing they can do. So ridiculous. So instead, they issued him a trespass warning, and if he comes back, he will be arrested. Now, we are stuck replacing all our broken stuff, and he is still living 10 feet off of our property and about 20 yards from our house, probably laughs at the fact that he got away with it all. This commenter asked OP, talk to a different law enforcement agency if one exists. Like, for instance, if it happened here in Houston and I got those results from the HPD, I would contact either the Harris County constables or sheriffs, then maybe the state. I say all of this because the clothes, hair, and stature of someone has been evidence enough to convict many people here in the US. And OP shares this. The sheriff is the one investigating. How would I go about opening something up with another agency? The reply is, you just walk in or contact by phone. If you have the police report, take a copy with you and your statement, along with copies of the video. The behavior days prior should have been enough for them to search his home for the mask and other clothing identified on the video. It all depends on where you are though, as laws vary. If you went to your local sheriff, they are elected officials. You can report them for not doing their job as well. This could be unsafe though, depending on where you live. Just see if you can contact the state police and go from there. And OP says, thank you, I'll do this. This commenter asked OP, how many times have robbers worn masks and somehow still got prosecuted and arrested? How much does your camera show? Does it show him walking back to his trailer? And OP tells us. I know, right? And the worst part is, in a few videos, he isn't even wearing a mask. They said they couldn't see his face clear enough to make an arrest on the spot. However, they trespassed him from my property based on my information. It makes no sense to me. The investigator will look through my evidence and hopefully they think differently than the cop and get this butthole arrested. The camera shows him coming and going from my yard and garden. He knew the camera was there and tried to avoid it as much as possible. Unfortunately, there is no camera facing him when he was shooting or throwing rocks. I did catch him acting like he was going to throw one and then he didn't and walked away. Mostly all you see is him walking around and yelling. The same guy has broken into a business across the street and stole more than $10,000 of tools. But because of his mask and bad camera quality, nothing happened. I truly don't understand. I hope you can keep it this safely, OP, because this needs justice, I do believe. What do you think? I want to put a quick blooper at the end of this story because I had to change one of the words to make it like YouTube and age appropriate, and I just couldn't even hold it together anymore. It's pretty funny. What should I do about my neighbor hogging the backyard and inviting a man to live in it in a tent? Posted by Educational Passion 63. Holy crap, this is going to be crazy. Here we go. A little background. I'm recently divorced with 2 young children, 4 and 7 years old. I'm 33 at midnight tonight, July 13th. I struggle with mental health issues, mainly depression. I'm on PWD, which is welfare and disability through the government. My mother, 52 years old, had a stroke last year, January 2022, but had recovered fairly well and fast. She started a gradual return to work and then found out she had aggressive metastasized breast cancer and had to start chemo immediately, weekly, to be followed by surgery, radiation, and more chemo. So I had moved in with her upon getting served divorce papers. Into her 1-bedroom apartment with my 2 children and her Bernese mountain dog and ragdoll cat. We moved into the upper half of a house with 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, blah blah blah. There's a couple that lives downstairs with their yappy butt dog. When we moved in, they had a canopy tent with one side so we can't see in from our large balcony, which is fine. We found out that they smoke the funny all day and night, and I don't care if people smoke the funny, but I just hate the smell. I think it's gross, and my mom has asthma, and it really affects her. So we talked to them, and they moved their tent to the far side of the backyard. We can still smell it and hear them hacking away. Their dog is always running around, so we have to ask them to put him inside so we can let our dog out, because neither of them are fixed, as they're both young dogs and we're all poor. Their dog jumped on my 7-year-old daughter and hurt her, so now both of my kids are afraid of him. We've been here since May the 1st and have probably used the backyard twice because the lady is such a high chatterbox that you end up standing there forever listening to her go on about the most annoying stuff, and then we don't get to play. So we have to ask them to leave so that we can use the backyard, but that seems so rude, so we haven't done it. Then the guy puts up a hammock. And now, today, they've brought this guy in who apparently rode his bike to BC from Alberta, and he's going to be living in our backyard for a few days in a tent. I'm really upset that they didn't talk to us first, and I'm uncomfortable, like I don't know him. I have some strange man now living with us, around my children who play on the balcony. I don't know if I'm overreacting or what, but I'm uncomfortable and upset with them. What should I do? How do I gain access to my backyard while still keeping things amicable? I say do something or take action, OP, because I would want myself and my kid to be safe. Absolutely. Blooper time. I couldn't stop laughing after saying smoke the funny. Maybe I was the one smoking the funny here. We found out that they smoke the funny all day and night to the far side of the backyard. My neighbor is a nutcase. Posted by Deep Statistician 83. I've been having issues with my front neighbor since week 1 of moving into my apartment last year. It started when I came back home and there would be brown droppings on the floor, which I thought was dung. Turns out it's his dog vomit and trash scattered all over the hallway. When I got closer to my door, I noticed there was a bloody pad on my doormat and the trash was coming from my front neighbor. Accidents happen, so I thought it was the wind or some animal knocked it over. That same month, I had a package delivered, and when I came home, I noticed it was ripped open. Immediately after, I installed cameras to see what was really happening. I had another package delivered and caught the front neighbor reaching over and touching the package before looking up and realizing he was being recorded. He proceeded to say out loud, "Man, I didn't even do crap," and went back inside his apartment. Suspicious, right? He has a bad habit of walking his dog without a leash, and it would run off into the woods, chasing whatever animal was out there. When this happens, he yells into the void, waiting for his dog to come back. No recall whatsoever, and mind you, we live by a heavily trafficked road. Turns out, I'm not the only person who has an issue with him. The downstairs neighbors called the cops on him one night due to him and his girlfriend arguing and stomping on the floor. A separate occasion, I noticed brown dropping in the hallway and decided to check the camera to see if an animal had passed through. Come to find out, he opens his door for the dog to vomit out in the hallway and just doesn't clean up after it. This happened on 4 different occasions, and once it was even encouraged to throw up in front of the neighbor's doorstep. So I report this to the front office and included the time where he touched my mail. Shortly after, he comes to my door and tells me to stop lying on him. Like I don't have recorded evidence. After this, he'll give me the middle finger or give me the occasional "screw you" through the camera if anything bad happens to him. His car got towed, he flips off the camera. The apartment gave him a trash fine, he yells at the camera and calls me a B. I'm in close contact with the front office and they tell me about the conditions inside his apartment and how dirty it is. Obviously, this person has no respect for his environment. Recently, I've been vacationing for a couple of weeks, so I can't be bothered to check the cameras. But I came home yesterday and noticed that his bins were splayed all over the hallway. I checked to see what happened, and it turns out the wind blew them down. I wait for him to come home and pick up after himself, but instead he curses at the camera and calls me a weird bee. Part of me thinks it's funny to watch him be miserable, but the other part is worried about his seemingly aggressive behavior. This guy's a nutcase. Please protect yourself, OP, whether it's the cops, the downstairs office, whatever it has to be, protect yourself. Important question regarding crazy neighbor, posted by IamCherry37. Hi everyone, I really need some advice. For some context, I live in a townhome, so my next door neighbor is very close to me, and we both share a front yard area, but the entrance is split off. Okay, so recently I had to take action and call the HOA on her because she refused to pick up her dog's poop for about 2 years now, which is extremely ridiculous, and my family had enough of smelling dog crap every time we open our front door. We tried being nice and communicating with her, but she's crazy. Since then, the HOA has called her and she went crazy. We used to talk to her, but we have cut off communication and she keeps ringing our doorbell at 1:30 a.m. when she is extremely intoxicated. We have a Ring doorbell and she swears and leaves inappropriate messages, and she's also left me, a 20-year-old, many racist and rude voicemails over the past 3 days. We don't want her to ring our doorbell anymore, so should we go to the police or talk to the HOA again? The man who talked to her told her that we reported her, so I'm not sure how helpful the HOA will be. To be honest, I'm glad they told her it was us so she would take it seriously, because she thought we were the only ones who would continue taking her crap, because everyone in the neighborhood already hates her and have filed complaints to the village because she had the police at her house every week. Any advice would be helpful. I just want peace of mind that she can't ring our doorbell, but it's also hard because it's a no trespassing order allowed when the person lives 5 feet away from you. Talk to everybody, the HOA, cops, and even a restraining order, even though it is 5 feet away. Holy cow, I'm sorry, OP. Karen tries to steal my phone, thinking she knows best. Posted by the illegal human. I was comfortably sitting on the bus, enjoying a game on my phone. Being considerate, I always keep my phone on silent so I wasn't disturbing anyone. The bus ride was an hour long, which gave me a great opportunity to have some gaming fun. Suddenly, a Karen I didn't know comes up to me, demanding that I give her my phone. It turns out she believed it was her responsibility to teach me a lesson about using phones on public transport. She thought taking my phone was a noble mission. She genuinely thought that she was doing me a favor by taking away my source of entertainment. She believed that losing my phone would be beneficial for me in the long run. I calmly try to reason with her, expressing my confusion and explaining that I wasn't causing any harm. However, it becomes clear that she strongly believes in her righteous mission. She genuinely thinks that taking my phone is her way of imparting wisdom and correcting my behavior. And after a couple minutes of arguing, she didn't. She then yells at the bus driver that I stole her phone. The bus driver gets out of his seat, and he was believing her, so I told her to take my phone, turn it off, and give it to the woman to try to unlock it. She does a random password. It doesn't work. She does a random password again. It doesn't work, and again until the phone locks. I tried telling the bus driver that since she doesn't even know the password to her phone, then it's hers? The bus driver was still a bit skeptical, so when the phone unlocked again, I put in my password and got in on one try. And somehow, she doesn't back down and says, "So what if I tried to take the phone? It's still very disrespectful to use your phone in public. I was just trying to teach this boy a lesson." I spent 40 minutes waiting for the bus because Canadian Transit is a little piece of crap, and when I sit down, I'm trying to relax by playing some games. This Karen tries to steal my phone. Karen, stealing your property? Of course. I play Clash of Clans and Mighty Doom on my phone, and it's just entertainment. I've even made videos on it. Karen's gotta stop stealing property that's yours thinking it's hers. Housing cooperative ticks me off, posted by some account 89235. I'm living in a block of flats with slightly higher standards, meaning we have a gate and our own parking spaces, trash cans, camera system, and everything. I work as a programmer and remotely. I'm also single and I keep mostly to myself. I try to never harm anyone, not get into any drama, just live slowly and steadily alone, barely leaving home except for doing groceries, so my neighbors know me as that homeowner that never causes any problems and is always helpful and polite. One time, I had to replace my current bed. It was old and dirty and I just wanted something better. So I ordered a new bed and dismantled my old one, ready to be taken out. Once every 2 weeks, a truck comes in and checks through the neighborhood to take away all of the big things set beside the trash containers. That day was tomorrow. Sadly, I live on floor 3, so taking my old bed alone would be just too hard for me to do by myself. I asked my brother for help, but he couldn't have done it tomorrow, so he helped today. Now, before this, our block's terms of service say that you are not allowed to put out big trash except on the day that the truck comes. So, not wanting to make any outburst, I asked my favorite neighbor for a favor. If I could put it on his parking spot the day before, because, well, I wouldn't be able to do it on the correct day. He gave me a thumbs up, and then I checked with another member of the Housing Cooperative Board if it's fine, since the owner of the spot knows. He also said it's okay for him. So I moved on with the plan. My brother came in, we moved my old bed outside, occupied the spot, we called it a day. That's when the Karen came in. She's around 50 plus years old from looks. You know, the type that sits all day in the window and tries to find something to complain about. So she got into my home and tried to explain that it's against our community rules, so I had to have it taken away right now. I, in exchange, tried to explain to her why I did that, how I got approval from people and whatnot. She was not having it. She threatened to call the police on me for littering if I didn't get it done today. I said, sure, okay, guess I am technically in the wrong here, so I'll just comply. I called a private company to take away the bed today. I also specifically went to her home and told her that it would be done today, and she said it's fine. So the truck arrives and they start taking away the bed, and so does the police. Apparently, she already did call the police without waiting for me to do anything. I am livid and I'm literally panicking, not because I was afraid of a fine or anything, but just because it was the first time in my life that someone did something hostile for me, even though I said I'd do what she wants. I explained the whole situation. The police see no problem, they don't even cite me anything. They just give me a handshake, pat me on the back, and they leave. The lady that called the police looks out the window and yells, "Thank you, officers," with a grin. I am ever more upset at this point. I think to myself, you want to perfectly obey the law? Fine, I'll make sure you do. I got the community rules from the council and I studied them thoroughly to find potential reasons to make her life heck. I see her taking out the trash. I clearly hear glass bottles in the bag, and I look out the window. She throws it in the wrong container. I call the community board. Bam! Your rent went up because you don't comply with our sorting garbage rules. The next day I come back from groceries and I see her car. She parked a little over the line, so it's basically like taking up 2 spaces. I call the police. Bam! She gets a fine. She walks out her dog in the private space as I watch her through the window. I see her dog going, but she doesn't scoop it up. Oh, did you just do that? I call a community board with a complaint. She came to me and wanted to apologize. Now, here's the part that makes me look bad. I said, no, I don't accept it. Why? Because, I'll admit, I am vindictive to people who try to create trouble for others without a very good reason. I said, all I'm doing is making sure you are following the community rules. Is that wrong? And she scoffed at me, something rude, and went away. I've been doing that for like 3 months now. A month ago, she was kicked off the board for too many rules violations. Today, she moved out, but before she did, she made sure to put a bag of trash on my doorstep while I was away. Sad for her, she's stupid and the trash contained a letter with her information on it. So I had the last laugh by reporting it to the police. I know, rules are rules, and I was technically in the wrong first for breaking them. But the moment she went out of her way to enforce them and then screw me anyway, that's when the line was crossed. I have no shame for bullying her out of here. I was just doing God's work and ensuring that the rules are not broken. You want the house? Okay, good luck at the renovation. Posted by Throwaway 1914-07. This happened in the year 2015. This is the long story short of the already long story. My grandmother on my father's side died in 2007, bless her soul. She owned a house and a lot of bungalow type stuff near the sea. Now this house wasn't paid in full, and there's still a remaining balance of about $5,200 in US dollars, which this is already big money for us. Because my father is the only son, his older sisters agreed that he should get the house. There was no will, but he should pay the remaining balance. We lived there and we renovated the house. Well, my father did almost 75% of the work. I mean, he added 2 bedrooms, he did a ceiling and furniture, he even added another bathroom and tiled the floors, kitchen sink and septic tank. There was no drainage system on that location. So basically, we received the house in bare shape. We paid fully in 2015, but we didn't receive the title. There was just so many excuses. 2016 comes. His nephew is a retired commander, and he visited my parents and told my father that he wants to add a second floor so he and his wife could live there also. My father didn't agree, and he called his older sister if they want that to happen. They just said that they don't want to get involved. His nephew showed him that he already had the title of the house. Don't know how he did that. Maybe he used his political background. I'm not sure. So my father was furious. He called me and told me what had happened. By that time, I had already bought a small patch of land for them when they want to retire, but I'm still saving enough money to build a house suitable for their needs. There were court battles that I will not include, but in the end, his nephew won. But there was an agreement that he has to pay my father $7,400. He mailed us the contract that we should vacate the house after 6 months, and there was a specific item that our lawyer pointed out. A, we should repaint the house, no specific color, and B, leave the house in the original state. Guess what? We hired a construction team to demolish the bedroom, the bathroom, remove the ceiling, the kitchen sink, tiled floor, and also the septic tank, leaving it in the original state. We spent about $2,800 including the labor. The cherry on top, we painted the house with black inside and red outside with violet dots. It was a huge eyesore. I was bombarded with lots of calls and messages from my aunts and cousin, which I did not reply. We went no contact after that. My parents now live in a beautiful farmhouse, tending their small garden. They enjoy morning walks by the lake, just living a stress-free environment. They're planning to adopt a puppy next month. Maybe you're wondering if $5,000 is a small amount of money. I didn't include that the title was pawned to someone, not a family member. We got our money back because we have receipts proving that we paid the remaining balance. I think this is late, but I think I had made errors in computing our currency into dollar. The judge ruled that, besides the remaining balance that we had paid, we should also get paid with the renovation expense. Investor wants to buy my house way over market value. Sure, no problem. Posted by DodoHead974. Background. My parents and their neighbor bought homes in an up-and-coming part of Florida 20 years ago. We're talking half-acre lots with 2,500 square foot homes for like $130,000. Our neighbor's home was a little smaller than my parents', no pool, and over the 20 years, the only thing done to the house was a new roof. Nothing else had been changed. Everything was still the original. Appliances, the paint, the AC unit, cabinets, tile, and carpet. I wish I could say that she took care of it and never needed to change things, but that wasn't the case. Or neighbor's house looked 20 years old. Well, she is a widow and the house is huge for just her, so she decided to sell and take advantage of the market. She listed it for $400,000. Despite never having put a penny into it, the house goes onto a bidding war and the top bidder is an investor from California. She offers to pay $30,000 over asking, pay the closing cost, and can do it the same day. Cue malicious compliance. The investor woman had 2 stipulations. Our neighbor takes the house off the market immediately, and she turns over the key to her management company with the cash for the home held in escrow until the key was turned over and our neighbor's side of the paperwork done. Now, our neighbor was upfront with this woman and the state of her home and asked if she wanted to have her management company come to look at it first. The woman says, "No, I'm renting the house and it doesn't need to be painted, just pull it off the market." This woman essentially bought the home for about $450,000 when it was all said and done. So our neighbor immediately goes to the management company office with her realtor, signs the paperwork, hands over the key, and gets the check for the home. A few days later, our neighbor gets a call from the investor lady. She is irate. The house is in disarray. It needs a paint job ASAP, new appliances and flooring at the least. She demands that our neighbor paint the house. She won't take ownership of the home until that is done, to which our neighbor responds to her, "It's not my home anymore. It was signed over to you and that check handed to me and cleared. That house is no longer my problem. Enjoy." This story all came about because yesterday my parents called our old neighbor. There was a for sale sign on the house again and we were confused. Our old neighbor promptly showed up and told us the story, and we are all laughing hysterically because the woman has it listed for $430,000, which anyone with eyes to tour it would never pay. And even if she did get it, she'd still be losing a crap ton of money. Who doesn't love a story when greedy investors trying to inflate the market lose and lose big? Sounds like she got a little greedy and it came back to bite her in the butt. Ooh, it would suck to be that investor right now, wouldn't it? What would you do if you were OP? This crazy Karen story is called Ignore the Red Lights and Cones at Your Peril, posted by 7dory Native. About a decade ago, while I was waiting for my current department to hire, I took a job with a private EMS company as an EMTI on a fast response motorcycle unit, contracted out to our local freeway agency for accident response. It was an okay gig, long hours, and riding 300 plus kilometers every day killed my love of biking, but it beat the heck out of working on an ambulance. The same agency also staffed pickups with safety crews for the purpose of lane closures and scene safety. While we were a quasi-governmental unit, we had no real authority outside of that allowed to us by the Fire Brigade Services Act, and often had motorists ignore our suggestions when it came to not driving through accident scenes. This meant the police units still had to smack PPs occasionally, and it was usually quite fun to watch. I had the pleasure of working the same stretch of freeway as a certain Metro Police motor unit, and I watched him screw with people a few times, and two specific times come to mind. The first time I saw this salty old bugger use his power of craphousery was after a multi-vehicle pileup just after an aggressive bend in the freeway that closed down 3 of the 4 lanes of traffic, causing a line of cars that stretched for a few kilometers back around the bend, meaning that cars at the rear could not see what was causing the delay up front. A number of drivers decided that they were too important to wait and drove up the hard shoulder, half on the road and half on the grass, to mosey on by the accident scene, leaving the rule-abiding drivers to sit in the hot sun looking at us with dismay. After a few of them snuck by, nearly hitting crews who were busy treating patients and almost taking out a recovery vehicle, this absolute stud of a man got fed up and moved his bike into the shoulder, but in such a way that they weren't able to see him. Every car he stopped got told to park up and wait while he waited for his next victim. After he collected about a gaggle of 20 of them, he slowly made his way up the line, ticket book in hand, to have an unhurried chat with each driver individually. Not only did I get to watch each idiot eat an almighty fine for leaving the roadway and ignoring emergency vehicles, they also had the pleasure of sitting there as the scene was cleared before being allowed back into traffic, turning a 20-minute delay into nearly an hour of baking in the noonday sun. There was much gnashing of teeth and mutterings of, "Don't you have anything better to do, officer?" While that was pretty funny to me, the best I saw of him was a few months later when we got a call for a scrap metal hauler that was quite impressively overloaded that had managed to roll over while on the 2-lane overpass connecting the same national freeway to the city freeway that led into the industrial area south of the city center. This thing must have been pushing 40,000 kilograms when it wedged itself, nose against the right-hand concrete barrier and tail digging a deep gouge into the counterpart barrier on the left. This meant that there wasn't a ball hair on either side of the truck, and traffic was diverted at the entrance to the overpass, around 500 meters up from the scene. I didn't technically need to be there at this point, as the driver had been taken to the hospital and the road was closed, awaiting the arrival of 2 heavy rigs to lift and recover the truck and the contents. I was leaning on my Suzuki, perving over to this officer's BMW R1200 RT when we noticed that the crew of the safety unit at the closure was having difficulty with a vehicle that seemed to think they were above the law, and were aggressively trying to get by the pickup, the cones, and the angry men in reflective gear. Seeing this and the potential for injury, he told them to wave the car through. As it zoomed down and then up to us on the top of the overpass, he winked at me, and when they stopped behind the very heavy and very wedged truck, he wandered over to have a chat with the driver, who was apparently the spokeswoman for the 4-strong irritation of Karens within. The crux of his chat with her was that he certainly understood their point about needing to get to their highly important destination, but that the road that they had elected to use was currently blocked by 40 tons of mangled steel, and he was sure that they would agree that it would be dangerous for her to drive back against the traffic, considering that we had heavy rigs and support vehicles arriving and setting up. He apologized for the inconvenience, but directed them to park up by our bikes and wait for the rigs to do their thing, after which we could all be on our merry way. It took about an hour to get the road clear, after which they most definitely weren't making eye contact and appeared like beaten dogs as he finally wished them safe travels on their way. How would you handle this Karen story? It's called Entitled Couple Buy Our House, posted by Titanic Euphemism. So we recently went to auction and sold our house. The couple who purchased it turned out to be rude, entitled twerps. We were very thorough in preparing our sale documents, going above and beyond to detail all the renovation works that we've completed. Due to public holidays in our open house period, we also had more than the usual inspection times and even opened the house privately for some interested parties. There was ample opportunity for checking everything out. Auction went fine, but the first sign of trouble came after. The couple took nearly 2 hours to sign the contract. It's explained to them that this is an unconditional sale, as in they can't pull out of the sale for any reason without losing their deposit. They also can't request a building or pest inspection now and use the findings as a reason to come back out of the sale and then receive their deposit back. Those things are meant to be organized before purchase, or you just take your chances. That's how it works here when it's an auction. A private sale has different rules. They then asked to purchase some furniture, which we said that we'd think about. In the next days, the real estate agent starts plaguing us with a number of texts and calls, asking various questions about the property on behalf of the couple. What are the roof tiles made of? When did we last clean the roof? What is the deck made of? What's the material under the deck? Where's the storage battery for the solar panels? And finally, have we had the air conditioner serviced? And so on. We answer it all, but it starts to become annoying, and we advise the agents all of this info in either the ad or the building report. Or it should have been discussed before the purchase. It starts to become clear that the couple are wealthy investors who have moved from another country and just bought the house off the photos. They then demand a building inspection. Our conveyancer urgently advises against this. If they were to find pretense to pull out of the deal, then they would lose their deposit, yes, but then we would have no funds coming through for the settlement of our new house. We do not have any legal obligations to say yes, so I advise no. The agents harass us for a week, begging, but I tell them to drop the topic and it's a definite no. The couple then asks to bring forward the settlement date. We're actually okay with this, but the lady we purchased our new house from is not. To make the money work, we need to settle the old and new houses on the same day, so we have to say no, or else we have to spend a lot of money putting ourselves up in a hotel for a few weeks. We can't afford that, and so we say no. This angers the couple because then they have to pay extra rent where they're currently living. We apologize, but it's out of our hands. The agents harass us again on the couple's behalf, but we stay firm. Another barrage of questions about the house follow, which we answer. They then ask us which furniture we're selling them. Well, we decline to sell anything, as these people are just too much trouble. Then the couple asks for their pre-settlement inspection. Now, this is normal to check that nothing included in the sale contract has been moved from the home, like fixtures and fittings such as curtains and so on. It's legally not meant to be done until the 7 days before settling, and they request it 15 days out. We tried to tell them to come on the Monday or Tuesday before settlement so that the house is empty, and they refused. We end up saying yes, as we don't want them there while we have our storage containers on site and have scheduled time to be packing. We make it clear the house is not in final sale condition and they are agreeing to settle as is with our goods taken out, and they agree in writing. On inspection day, we happen to have an old couch on the nature strip awaiting hard rubbish collection. It's been completely torn up by our cats, and not even any of the neighborhood scavengers have collected it. They are clearly upset that we didn't sell the furniture to them, and they accuse us of dumping rubbish on their property. We remind them it's not theirs yet and show them the council booking slip for collection. We drove around the block at inspection time and settled in the court opposite and watched them bring someone who we highly suspect was a builder on site without our permission. Couldn't prove it though. Finally, we are packing our storage containers the weekend before settlement. We take a 5-minute break and sit inside with the front door and container door open, keeping an ear out if anyone starts sniffing about our goods. Lo and behold, we hear people walking around in the driveway next to our containers. I am out of my seat like a shot and instantly saw these guys are builders measuring our fence. I demand to know what they think they're doing. They say they were told no one would be there and they were allowed in. I snapped and screamed at them that this was still my property, that they didn't have permission to be there and to leave. They refused and said, "Oh, we'll be just a minute doing this." I said no, they were trespassing and to get out. They start walking over to me being threatening and intimidating, getting in my personal space. Now, I'm a woman under 5 feet and I'm an easy target in their eyes, I guess. At this point, they look up and see that my very tall and large husband is coming toward them and hot-footed to their car. I call the agents and my conveyancer in a rage and let them know this is completely unacceptable and I will call the police if they are seen again, and the couple deny that they sent them. The day of settlement comes and all is good for the money. We hand our keys over and breathe a sigh of relief that this is all over. But it isn't. We get an angry email from the couple's conveyancer claiming that we left goods on the property and didn't leave it in fit condition for settlement, and that as his client wasn't allowed on the property, he couldn't check for this properly. We reminded the conveyancer that his client already put it in writing that they came to inspect too early and accepted the condition of the house. He attaches pictures of the goods that they want picked up. It's a bag of rubbish that we forgot in the shed, probably from the day their builders came and we were distracted. In the photo are also things like spare fence pickets and roof tiles, which we left as a courtesy. Fine, we say, this is all too hard, we'll come and get it. So we have to get permission to go on the property as it's not ours anymore. My husband gets there and starts packing up everything in the photo. The owners freak out and demand that he leave everything there. My husband refuses until they put it in writing what they want left. Begrudgingly, they write that they want the fence pickets and all the spare bathroom and roof tiles left. Then my husband takes the paint tins that we left. Remember, we just renovated before we sold, so we left some paint for touch-ups. They want him to leave it all there, but they refuse to put it in writing, so he takes it all and snail pellets too. Oh well, the garden has a massive snail problem, but they can pay out of their own pocket to deal with that now. In the end, all they really wanted gone was the bag of rubbish and the decorative steel panels at the back of the house, which we left as a fixture and fitting as per contract. But anyway, they just made a fuss as retaliation about the builder to inconvenience us. The icing on the cake? They demanded my husband change the alarm code for them on his way out. He told them no, it was not his responsibility to do that, and also he had left them detailed written instructions on how to do it themselves. They said they couldn't figure it out, and he shrugged and told them to get a technician and then walked out. By contrast, at our new home, the previous owner left us a long handwritten letter explaining how the house works, some menus of her favorite takeout, and her number if there were any questions. She left us spare light globes, electrical parts, fittings, and spare floorboards. We were happy about that, as we intend to change out the old carpet and can now match the rest of the flooring. We found that she left behind some handwritten recipes and cookbooks. We texted her thanks for the note, and would she like her books? She was so grateful. That's how it should have gone. The people we sold to were so awful to deal with. If they had been nicer, we would have left the couple a handwritten note of our own, explaining to avoid the neighbor on the right, as he has no sense of social norms and the only way to get him to leave is to slam the door in his face. Oh, and he also has a severe pest problem on his property. It's a giant forest in suburbia and he doesn't maintain it. Oh well. Hope they don't mind rodents, ticks, and all manner of spiders, including nests of redbacks, jumping jack ants, eastern brown snakes, and foxes. or grass that is as tall as your shoulders. We would also have explained to avoid the neighbor to the left, who we were sure was a drug dealer, bikies at his house at all hours, and constantly having roof plumbing done, pressure washes his truck most days to clean the residue. And in his off time, he plays with power tools in a manner that can only be described as grinding a block of steel. Looking back, actually, it wasn't a great place to live. Hope they enjoy. What do you think those Karens are going to do when they find out what their place is really like? Way to go, OP. What do you think? Karen doesn't like people parking in front of her house, posted by the Fallen Polish. So when I was around 6 years old, I lived with my family in a nice house in a small city in Poland. It was a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts, and pretty much all the neighbors knew each other. There were no sidewalks around the part of the street that I lived at, only one crappy sidewalk that started on the other side in front of my neighbor's house. It's important to remember that the sidewalk was very old and in bad shape. Still, to this day, people are asking the city to fix it. This story is about that neighbor, Karen. She was an older lady, and everyone suspected that she really didn't have anything better to do than gather gossip and disturb everyone trying to rule the street. Everyone was commenting that if you wanted to get the whole area to know something, you had to tell her that message as a secret. Whenever someone came to visit us, they usually parked their car in front of our property. But on bigger meetups, like barbecues or parties, people would park in front of our closest neighbors' houses too. That never was a problem. No gates were obstructed and no one was disturbed. Well, almost. Karen hated when someone parked in front of her house. She would always run out yelling about, "How dare you park your filthy cars on my precious sidewalk?" My mother is not someone that lets someone yell at her. She had many discussions with Karen about the laws and rules that stated that she doesn't own anything outside of her fence, which means that the sidewalk is public and anyone can park on it as long as they leave enough space for a wheelchair to pass. That wasn't enough. Every time someone would come to us and park their car there, the yelling would start. Until one time when my mother's friend, Tomek, came for a coffee during winter. He's a local policeman and his specialty is road law. So my mother tells him about Karen and her behavior regarding the sidewalk. Tomek laughs since that thing was in such bad shape that it can barely even be called a sidewalk. When he was leaving, he assured my mom that he would step by next day for coffee on his lunch break. The next day comes by and I was playing with my brother in the snow. We see a black car pulling over in front of Karen's house, and as the driver gets out, Karen storms out of her house yelling, "You can't park here. This is my sidewalk. Get your filthy car off my prop." Well, there he was, Tomek, with his full uniform, hat and all, turning around towards Karen as comically as he could. "Excuse me? You tell me that I can't park my car here?" Yes. "But this is a sidewalk open to the public." "Yes, this is my sidewalk." "So, let me get this right. This is your sidewalk?" "Yes." "And you are the one responsible for taking care of it?" Proudly, Karen replies, "Well, yes, I am. That's why I don't allow anyone to park here." "Oh, that's so nice that I found you. Since it's your sidewalk, you are responsible for clearing the snow from it to not create danger for the people walking on it. Since it was not plowed, I need to write you a fine for endangering public safety," he says as he pulls out his notebook. "But no other sidewalks are plowed." "Oh, it doesn't matter. The other sidewalks belong to the city. The clearing crew is working on cleaning them. But since this sidewalk is yours, it is your responsibility." "But I'm old. I can't shovel the snow." "Then you need to hire someone to do that. Of course, if this sidewalk happened to be of public property..." Yes, it's not mine." "No." "But a moment ago you were yelling at me that it was. So what is it? Is it yours or not? Because I don't know if I should fine you now." "No, it's not mine." "All right, seems we've cleared that up. Now, if you ever harass anyone like you did with me, it could result in a fine. So, I recommend you watching out on what you claim to be yours." And then he proceeded to cross the street and enjoy a coffee in our house. Karen never disturbed anyone for parking in front of her house again. She would only stare at people trying to burn holes in their skulls with her sight. I love this story because I didn't expect the cop to come out in full uniform and then just make it awkward for her, and really did an awesome job. Way to go. Selling my previous house, demand I bear all the repair and upgrade costs, posted by Snoo Seagulls 4821. Some background story. The previous house was owned by my parents, around 850 feet. They bought it in 2003 and it was previously owned by another owner. My parents spent almost $5,000 for the repair and upgrade of the house. We replaced the floor marble, we repainted the walls, upgraded and repaired the bathrooms, we checked the pipes, we even replaced the main door to a French door style and also upgraded the kitchen. Anyway, back to the story. Recently, my parent bought a new house because they want to be near to their friends and relatives. Because of that, they're selling the previous house and planning to use the money for upgrading the new house. They hired a real estate agent to help with the process and contractors to check if there are any damages or things that need to be repaired or replaced. Last month, a buyer was interested in buying because of the location. It was near her boyfriend's house. She came a few times to inspect the house and even hired a lawyer to be a witness. My parent didn't mind and tried their best to assist. After a week, she was satisfied and agreed to buy the house and went to the bank to get the loan. That's where the problem starts. Let's call her K and the lawyer L. K recently demanded some furniture of the house to be given to her. The furniture she requested is the air conditioning, the fans, television, the closet. Now she insisted because it's made out of wood and marble, and the bed frame for 3 of the bedrooms. She even asked the lawyer to write that down in the contract and stated that my parent willingly gave it to her. My parent doesn't want any confrontation, just agreed except the bed frame and the closet. When she found out, she got more and more demanding, asking for a discount, more furniture, and even asked my parent to pay for the maintenance fee until she moves in, including when she repairs the house. My parent must continue to pay the maintenance fees. My parent's fed up with her and won't sell the house if she keeps up with more demand, and then she quiets down. After the bank loan was approved, the following week she applied for the loan and the money is in. My parents moved out and gave her the keys, so they're temporarily staying with me. This wasn't the end of the story. Last week she contacted us and demanded my parents pay for the repair cost and upgrade of the house. Like what? My parents couldn't keep up with her, so they asked me to handle her. This is the following conversation. "Where are your parents?" she said. "I need to speak with them about the housing repair." I said, "Miss, did you think you're buying a brand new house? Why would they pay for anything that's under your own?" They lied to me. There are a few damages on the walls, so they must repair and upgrade my house for the inconvenience that they caused. Am I dreaming? Miss, when the contract is signed and the ownership is already transferred, the house and repair and the upgrade is no longer my parents' business. If they don't do what I ask, I'll sue you. Have a good day, miss. After I close the call, she keeps bombarding with messages and threatening to get a lawyer. I actually contacted the lawyer that she hired when my dad became friends with the lawyer, and the lawyer told me that she actually insisted him to add in the extra condition in the contract without my parents' knowledge that they must bear the cost for anything up to 3 years. What? Anyway, now I'm just waiting for the lawyer letter, I guess. An update. Did my parents read the contract? Yes, they even asked the lawyer to read out and explain the terms and conditions in the contract before signing it. The contract is now in the safe. About the altercation of the contract. After signing the contract, the lawyers have to go to the government office to update the new ownership of the house with the original contract as proof. She contacted the lawyer to ask him to edit more terms in the contract after my parents signed the contract. He flat out refused because, first, that is illegal. He will lose his license and he'll get sued by my parents and will face criminal charges. When she found out that he will not bend, she is looking for other lawyers that are willing to do it. Anyway, back to the story and update. The real estate agent, which is my dad's old friend, visits my parents and told them that she keeps harassing him in his office about the issue and wants to sue them. She even demands that they compensate for the repair costs for things that my parents didn't know about. Her boyfriend even went to their office and created a scene there. My dad felt so guilty about this matter and couldn't sleep since her harassment started. I couldn't do anything because, by law, she doesn't have proof and there will be no case. The lawyer told my dad and the agent if she did find a lawyer and the letter of demand came, the lawyer asked to be their representative because he is there since the beginning. My dad is now debating about this issue. Overbearing neighbor, posted by Logical Pineapple 624. How do I deal with a neighbor who just trauma dumps and wants to be more than just neighbors? Context. I have lived in my neighborhood for a short amount of time, 3 years to be exact, and as a first-time homeowner, I am extremely cautious about the noise that we make. We recently had a patio installed which caused quite a bit of noise from the contractors. On the final day of the contractors being there, they arrived early, 7:15 a.m., and started grinding rebar, which is quite noisy. I felt terrible for the early wake-up call to all of my neighbors, and I decided to write them a handwritten apology card with a Starbucks gift card as an olive branch. One of my neighbors just moved in, and we haven't introduced ourselves yet, so we took the opportunity to welcome them to the neighborhood in the card, and we gave them our phone numbers in case they needed anything. After delivering each of the cards to their doors, I received a text about an hour later from the new neighbor where she thanked me for the note and the gift card and asked if we could meet each other sometime. I agreed, and we made plans to see each other the next day. Leading up to the meetup, she was texting me constantly, and to maintain a good relationship, I responded in a timely manner. She started to lightly trauma dump, trigger warning, D-violence, about abusive relationships in the past and other items that felt odd to share before even meeting in person or with someone that you barely know. I was sympathetic as I didn't know what to do. Once our meetup happened, she went into much greater detail about her abusive relationships, her vices, and other traumatic events in her life. I was shocked, but I kept my composure and was again sympathetic. She also told me that she was a therapist for families and individuals who struggle with mental health. After the first meetup, she increased how often she was texting me and even stated, "We are the same person and I am going to make you be in my wedding." Mind you, I've known her for a total of 36 hours at this point, the first text to when the text was delivered. Now she texts me every day, multiple times a day, and I've been trying to distance myself a little because, well, 1, it was a lot to process, and 2, because I am caring from 3 other dependents while working full-time, and also, I'm more of a low-maintenance friend to my friends and family, where constant communication, it's not part of my norm. She has noticed me pull back a little and not text back the moment she texts me. She mentioned, hoping she didn't scare me off, multiple times, where I had to tell her, "No, but I'm quite busy, so it's difficult to text, and I like to unwind and unplug after work," hoping that would give a hint that I don't want to text as often or, well, if really at all. Well, that hasn't worked. She has now escalated to asking to borrow items such as a ladder, which of course I let her borrow as she's a first-time homebuyer and probably doesn't have a lot of home tools that she'll need to settle in. My husband and I brought it over and I met her fiance for the first time. The encounter was quite awkward and she stared at me the entire time. They didn't invite us in, which was a relief after the initial encounter, and we walked back home. Within 20 seconds of leaving her driveway, I received 3 texts gushing about me and saying that we should all hang out more. And within 4 minutes, she was in our driveway returning the item. Did she actually need it, or was it just an excuse to see me? I didn't respond for a while, and then she began asking again if she scared us off. She also began asking who my primary care provider, my dentist, and my OBGYN was. Also, every time I go into my backyard, she goes into her backyard. She never says hi, but it's now happening more often that it isn't a coincidence. I am in a bind because I have had bad experiences with overbearing friends in the past who have intentionally tried to ruin aspects of our lives, so I am overly cautious now with the people that I engage with, especially neighbors. I am also violating an HOA rule with having one too many animals at my home. So if she wanted to get back at me, she could by reporting me, so I want to keep myself in somewhat of good graces with all the neighbors. Should I be concerned, or am I being overly cautious? How should I proceed? Oh, given the phone number was the first mistake that opened the Pandora's box can of worms, maybe just back off little bit by little bit and just gray rock, as they say, and don't give her any attention. I hope this gets better, OP. A crazy Karen followed me home, posted by Vulpix2317. For some context, I was a 22-year-old female, though I do have a baby face and could pass for 16 or 17 years old easy. I had a Yamaha motorbike, 125 cc's, meaning it could easily go 70 miles per hour. My dad raced motocross, and I've been riding bikes my whole life. He taught me all the road rules and the safety do's and don'ts. So one day, I'm riding to visit my uncle who lived in the middle of nowhere, and the roads there are all 50 miles per hour, and they have extreme bends, and on each side of the road is a massive ditch. I'm going 55 miles per hour, only slowing when the bends are bad. Cue a Karen with 3 kids, all under 10, in the back tailing me, and I mean tailing, within a couple of feet to the back of my bike. So I speed up to ignore her, and then she pulls her minivan to the side of me and tries to force me to the edge of the road, which is just a ditch. I slow and I let her pass, my heart racing as I barely kept my bike upright. You'd think this is where it ends, right? No. I was maybe a few miles from my uncle's at this point, and I have to go through a village high street to get there. As I'm going through, I see Karen, and her minivan is blocking the street, and she stood with her door open in the road, her arms out as she tries to stop me and force me off of the road. I just managed to get past her as onlookers were yelling at her to stop. I go to the last few streets to my uncle's and stop down the road, parking my bike and taking my helmet off. With a screech, Karen's minivan pulls up in front of me and she runs for me screaming. What the heck is wrong with you? Don't you know how to drive? When I just stare at her, she screeches again. Only cars can drive in the road, bikes have to drive on the side or on the pavement. Yeah, no, that's so wrong. That thing can't go fast enough to be in the road. You should have pulled over when I told you to. I'm gonna report you. At this point, I see my uncle coming outside, his eyes shifting between the Karen and me. Now, something to know about my uncle and me is that we are crazy close. We're both pranksters too. Also, my uncle is 6 foot and not a small man. So without skipping a beat, I put on a fake sad face and run to him screaming in a terrified voice. Daddy, this lady tried to grab me off of my bike and followed me home. Where I live, you can get a provisional license before 18, meaning that I could have been a minor. Trying not to laugh, my uncle puffs up his chest and yells out at the woman who had run after me and is now behind us. You followed my little girl home. She's a child. Karen's face went white, and I swear she looked like she had crapped herself as she tried to defend herself, only for my uncle to interrupt her. As loud as he could, making sure every nosy neighbor had come out, he screams, "What are you, some kind of perv? I'm calling the police." Without blinking, Karen runs for her car, speeding off with 3 confused-looking kids in the back. As soon as Karen was out of view, I told my uncle what happened, and we both laughed as we went inside to see my aunt laughing as she had watched the whole thing through the window. Update. Okay, so just for clarification, I didn't have a camera as this was years ago when they cost a lot more than they do now. And yes, I could have pulled over and called the police, but I was on my bike and my phone in my backpack, so I would have had to stop, get my bag off, and grab it. And if you've used bike gloves, you know it's not possible to use a phone with them. I had no intention of stopping, spending all that time and giving her the opportunity to run for me. As for the police afterwards, I was just happy she had screwed off. Weird neighbor aggressively stomping above me in the middle of the night, posted by Shade Coldfang. So I just had the weirdest thing happen to me. I live in an old building made in the 1800s, and so the flooring and the walls, they're all weird, and on some parts more than just thick, and on some parts like paper thin. So anyways, my window was open in the middle of the night, and I was about to go to bed, cause it's summer and it's hot, so I was just letting some fresh night air in. My window in my bedroom goes into my backyard, but there is also a way that people used to exit the property. When I was laying down in bed, my female neighbor upstairs stood next to my open window and just said quietly, "Hello," into my room from the outside. Weirded out by this, I just made a grunting and cough noise to make myself known that I am in here. She left my window, and about a minute later, out of frickin' nowhere, she started getting mental upstairs and started banging on the walls, jumping like a maniac and stomping hard on the floor at 11 p.m. in the night out of nowhere. I was starting to get mad because I wanted to sleep. And then it wouldn't stop. I tossed over a jacket and walked outside. Her windows were open and I was staring up into the windows, waiting for her to make more noise so I have a reason to yell up there and threaten with the cops, because this was way over the top what she did, and it's against the building rules made by our landlord to make this much noise beyond 9 p.m. So as I was standing there in the dark backyard, it got suddenly very quiet in her home. So I was getting back into my apartment, still like, what the heck just happened? Why did she go outside into the backyard, quietly say hello into my open window, just to go away and get mental above me? Sometimes I just wish I could see into people's heads to know why they do this. This comment says mental illness, and OP replies, might be, but I can't say for sure. She was always fairly quiet, no loud noises or anything strange like what had just happened. Of course, sometimes some bumping and stomping happens through the day, but not as loud and not as aggressive, like just walking or running or dropping some stuff or cleaning. All in all, what just happened is truly strange, and I am living here in my apartment for 8+ years, and stuff like this has never happened before. Insane fraud and terrible neighbors today. Was bored at work, so got a guy fired and possibly sent to prison for fraud, posted by bored hotel worker. I work the night shift as a receptionist at a hotel in Norway, and most nights are spent watching Netflix and playing games. Last summer was really slow, and I also worked a lot extra, so I ran out of stuff to watch and of games to play. One night, I got a mail from Scooter. He wanted to book a room for almost 20 days. I just had to send him the price and the confirmation that we had the rooms available, and then he would send me his credit card info for me to pre-charge. Normally, we just delete these kinds of mail, but I was bored out of my mind, so I responded with an offer for around $2,000 for the entire stay. I also made sure to inform him that he could cancel for free up to the day of the arrival. This is probably the most common fraud attempt in hotels and travel industry. Unlike most businesses, we are able to charge credit and debit cards with only the card number and expiration date. No need for a PIN code, a CVC, or other authorization methods. Our software also allows us to deposit money directly to local and international bank accounts by using the card number. Because of this, jerks like Scooter will try to prepay with stolen and skimmed cards, but then cancel the booking and ask us to refund the amount to a different card. A couple hours after sending him the offer, he responded with a Visa number and told me to charge him as soon as possible. I checked the card with our validation software, and to my big surprise, it did not belong to Scooter. If validation succeeds, it will return with the card owner's name 90% of the time. I sent him a new mail stating that the card was declined because of insufficient funds. He quickly replied and gave me a new card to try. Guess what? This one didn't belong to Scooter either. Wasn't even the same person as the first card. By checking the BIN codes, the 6 first digits, I found which banks had issued the cards. Not even issued in the same country. My plan was just to call the banks and inform them of the attempted scam, but there were still several hours before I could go home, so I decided to screw with Scooter a bit more. I sent him a reply that the second card went through and also the reference number for his stay at our hotel. As expected, a couple hours later, Scooter sent a mail canceling the order and asked if we could refund the money to a different card, as he had lost his wallet and deactivated the card that he paid with. This card was issued from a Polish bank. Not sure why, but Polish bank accounts are often used by people who want to launder money from Bitcoin and drugs. You can buy a legit card for around $500 that is registered to some guy or girl in Poland from the darknet. At this point, Scooter was probably pretty happy about the $2K he would soon receive. I replied that it was no problem for me to transfer the dollars to a different card as long as it was valid. How fun it would be to also cancel his own card so that he had to spend $500 for a new one. Not fun enough. In the last mail, I wrote that he could send me the card number, but that our email server would go down for maintenance in a few minutes, so my boss would do it on Monday. It was now Saturday morning, so enough time for the charged bank to call us and reverse the transfer. If he needed the money right away, I told him to call the hotel before I ended my shift at 7 o'clock. He called almost immediately, and I wrote down the card number and his phone number. Told him that I transferred the money and that it would be in his account by 12 o'clock. My shift ended, and I went home with all the info that Scooter had provided. Wanted to see if I could find out who he was, and of course, this idiot had an open Facebook profile that I found using his phone number. He even listed his address and employer. Looked a bit like the artist Scooter, but even with more screwed up face and spiky hair full of gel. He lives somewhere outside of London in an area that I would describe as a British trailer park. Houses that were nice at some point, but where the owners had spent no money on maintenance since it was built. Trash everywhere and broken windows that were boarded up or fixed by sealing holes with garbage. Now to the fun part. According to his Facebook profile, Scooter worked at a hotel. This meant that he would have access to card information from guests that book through sites like Booking.com. I called the manager of the hotel and I told him there was reason to believe that one of his employees was trying to commit credit card fraud and that the card's numbers could belong to their guest. I gave him the name of the people who owned the cards that Scooter tried to pay with, and to no surprise, both had stayed at the hotel. I told him it was Scooter, and the manager just exploded in anger. Not 100% sure what he said because he was screaming so loud, but I think Scooter wasn't a normal employee. He worked there through some kind of government training program or something. After talking to the manager, I called both Visa and MasterCard International and told them about Scooter's little business venture. Apparently, it's pretty easy to check if there are more cards that have been involved in fraud, where the cards also have been used at Hotel Scooter. With his Polish deposit account info, they would also be able to pin it on Scooter if he had been successful in scamming anyone and then sue him for the amount stolen. The police also called me later to get a statement regarding the whole situation, so I know that the manager reported it to the police. Not sure what happened to Scooter, but according to his Facebook profile, he no longer works at the hotel or anywhere else as far as I can see. Neighbors' kids are trespassing and throwing rocks at my car, with updates in the comments by Lou Yaya. My new neighbors have lived there for 2 months now. It's 3 single women with 8 children. Kids are always unsupervised. They come to our driveway and play, which I didn't think it was a big deal at first. Until my brother almost ran them over once in his work truck, he didn't even notice they were there. I was outside one day and the kids introduced themselves and they went off, telling me how whenever we aren't home, they come to my house, and I told them they couldn't trespass and to please not come over anymore because they can get hurt. Kids continued to come over. My brother spoke to them and he kicked them out. We randomly found 8 nails in our driveway and assumed that the kids threw them to our side since they had workers doing some stuff on their side earlier. Fast forward to the end of June and my brother comes in screaming to come look at my car, and he told me he yelled at the kids because he caught them throwing rocks at my car. They threw over 60 rocks at my car. I couldn't find an adult to speak to at their home either. Finally, a friend came out and said that she is just a friend and that the mothers are not home. I called the police station for them to come talk to the parents and make a report, and they said they can't come because they're kids and they can't make a police report on kids. 2 days later, the kids were outside playing with water and they decided to throw their underwear to our driveway, and it's been there for 4 days now. Yesterday, I came home from work and I heard bangs in my window. I ran to the front of the house and the kids were ready to throw another rock at my window when I told them to stop. I went over to their house and knocked for 10 minutes while their door was open and a newborn baby was just there at the door. When finally, one of the moms came out of their house, it It's very small and I grew up there, so I know how the house looks inside, and I know that they were ignoring me. She comes out and doesn't care that her kids are throwing rocks. She doesn't care to supervise her kids. She doesn't care that they damaged my car or anything, and doesn't want to take responsibility or tell anything to her kids. She is very dismissive and just shrugs her shoulders. What can I do in this situation? I'm installing cameras over the weekend. It's so frustrating. Update time. Comment says, call child services. If they're being left unsupervised, did you neglect to tell the police that? Then they are in an unsafe home and should be taken away. OP says, I did mention that to the police that they are unsupervised. The adults are inside, but the kids are out for hours by themselves. Hopefully, now that we are installing cameras, we can get proof. I also texted their landlord, but he never replied. So the person that answered at the police station said since they are minors, they can't do a police report, but I can take the parents to court. I told her, well, I don't need a police report to have proof of the incidents. She said no. I asked her if I need a report for my car insurance. She said no. I called my insurance and they said a police report will help. But my insurance wants me to pay my deductible, which I don't want to pay. The kids are 3 to 6 years old, and she said if they were 12 and older, they can do something. So I told the officer that answered, so kids can just damage someone else's property? She said no, that I need to take them to court, but they can't do a police report on kids. This is based in the USA as well, and you gotta call CPS, take them to court. I know it sucks for the kids, but these parents are not giving them the life that they need, and those kids need to be somewhere with love and care. That's what I say as a dad myself. New neighbors, apartment neighbor from heck, with updates, posted by my little Artmare. Today I went outside after my cameras flagged someone opening the gate to our yard and walking on our porch. I headed outside and saw that 2 bags of dirt that I had on the porch were now on the sidewalk in front of my house, and the gate was open. I walked over, picked it up, and then promptly heard, "Hey, that's mine." I've been dealing with hordes of porch pirates that all say similar phrases when caught, so I told her, "No, it's not. I have you on camera grabbing it off of my porch." Now, here's where the story gets interesting. She started getting ticked, yelling something on the phone, and then told me that her dad dropped them off to the wrong house. These bags were sitting there since last Friday, coincidentally the same day my wife and I cleaned out our old car for a trade-in. She did the cleaning and left most of the stuff by the gate for me to grab, including those 2 bags of dirt. I just brought it to the porch yesterday out of laziness. Now I should note I have an extensive garden and buy dirt every other week to supply new plants. These happen to be the exact same bags that I buy. So it was not unusual to think that I forgot a couple of bags in the old car. So I went inside and asked my wife, and she said that she didn't, so this person was actually telling the truth. I brought the bags back out and tried to apologize for the misunderstanding, but was cut off and told to learn how to be nice. I've never seen this person, and after checking my cameras, sure as heck, a random guy tossed them over my gate, and I must have missed the notification, and the timing was just perfect to where it didn't raise an eyebrow. No idea where she lives, but she carried the bags off, so it must be close. Should be fun moving forward. Update time. I don't plan on really attempting to apologize again, more so explain why I acted the way that I did and try to reset their interpretation of me via gift giving, so I don't have to deal with any more nonsense. They aren't the first neighbors to do something similar and then retaliate, hence the reason that I have cameras to begin with. Don't worry, I know what she did was rude as heck. Leaving the gate open honestly really screwed with me because my dog followed me out the second time and could have potentially escaped. I should have closed it, but my mind was elsewhere at the moment. Yeah, I honestly feel bad for being a jerk off from the get-go. In my defense, similar things have happened multiple times with much different results. If I see her again, I'm going to try to explain my train of thought today, but who knows, maybe even offer a free plant cutting to help keep the peace. After talking to my wife and thinking about it, you're right, I wasn't a jerk. I think that last night I felt sympathy in the moment, imagining if I botched a delivery like that and had to recover it. But thinking about it makes me realize that, regardless of her efforts, what she did was unacceptable. Don't worry, we have an extensive camera system. I actually have to shut some down during busy hours because of how many notifications I get. 3 different lots we park in around our house depending on which ones are full, and I have them all covered. Wanted to update everyone who's interested. It turns out it's the stepdaughter of a neighbor that I talk to regularly who just moved in next door. They came over and apologized for what happened. Yeah, it's a misunderstanding, but they better apologize. She was rude to you, OP, and now at least you can move forward on decent terms, I guess. Cut down the trees. Let me move my bins so you can look at them. Posted by Wild A Guess. Hopefully this is a short tale. So we have new neighbors, and they seem to be awful. They moved in 5 days ago, and for 4 days did nothing but chainsaw down all the trees and bushes on their land. All this greenery is about 40 years old. They also parked all over the place, blocking access for other neighbors. These aren't big houses, but it's a very leafy green place with trees everywhere. We live in a subsidence area, and the trees drink a lot of water, preventing runoff, and they help keep the water table down a bit. I know this because a few years ago, their house developed a large crack due to subsidence, and I spent a lot of time talking to the previous owners about it. Turns out, there are French drains under most of the houses here to manage the water. So, I went and I introduced myself very politely and explained the drainage and subsidence problem and asked them to leave up the trees at the front that divide our houses. Not only do they help with the drainage, but they give a nice privacy barrier. I can't see them and they can't see me. I come home later in the day and they've cut the lot down and there's just bare earth and a huge hole in the greenery. The petty revenge. Yesterday, my wife comes in with a huge smile on her face and she's moved the bins up to where the hole is, but still on our path. They could be looking at trees and bushes, but now they get a glorious view of my recycling, waste, and garden bins from their front door and living room window. For context, this is UK based, not in an HOA or other madness. We live in a conservation area, but our trees don't qualify for preservation orders. Even more pettiness in the comments. To make sure they get a constant waft of fauted breeze is a simple trick, assuming one has wheelie bins here and the prevailing wind is in their direction. Grab yourself a clothes peg, remove the spring, paint the jerk as close to the color of the bin, and slide it under the lid enough to get enough of a gap but still look closed from a distance. That is quality pettiness. Honestly, these neighbors probably won't care if they're that kind of person, but you know what? It feels good to be able to get back at them that way. Funny job, OP and wife. The justice and fallout in this story is insane. This story's called "My Boss Thought She Could Insult Everyone, so I Made Her Pay Everyone for Going on Vacations." Posted by Miss Plantasia. Last year, I took a summer job for a kids camp. It seemed to be quite well paid, and I wanted to try to see how working with kids goes. The hiring process was a little odd, as for the interview, I was just called unexpectedly, and that woman, which was later my boss, spoke on the phone for about 2.5 hours or more and asked some really weird personal questions. For example, she asked, "You aren't a COVIDiot, are you?" Remember that, it will be a factor in the story. Anyway, I needed the money and it was the only callback I'd gotten so far, so I took it. She then made us all come in 2 times before starting the job, so that she can explain it to us. Both times it went on the whole frickin' day without being included in our payments because it was not mandatory. I got to be the boss of my team. Then the first day came around and we faced 20 or more children with their parents. But the boxes with the name list, the toys and everything weren't there. We basically improvised and wrote their names as they came and hoped that they are indeed signed up. Later, the boxes arrived, but the contents were measly at best. She had given us 2 kinds of games, Uno and something else, bought it like 3 times. We got little instruments for the kids to decorate, but when she came around to check on us a few days later, she screamed at us. The freaking kids shouldn't have been allowed to take the instruments home, which she never said and made no sense. The next few days went on like this. She came around and screamed at us for doing something that made sense to every one of us and pretending that she had instructed us otherwise at the unpaid, non-mandatory orientation meeting, which I attended every time. She just talked about her personal life, no instructions. She went on and offended every single person in existence. She doesn't want to have lactose intolerant or handicapped kids in the camp because they're too much of a hassle. My Muslim colleague got scolded for wanting to go home to her toddler after a 10-hour shift, and she asked her in front of everyone if her son still breastfeeds in a crude way, because she doesn't have any reason to go home. Parents with questions or complaints are to be educated like kids because they behave like that when they didn't get screwed by their wife the night before. Also, she made us work more than 12 hours without a break and crapped on me when I stood up and went home at 12 hours worked. We have a law that requires that here. But 2 events stood out when she went after the kids. On the first occasion, you have to remember that this woman has an unhealthy obsession with Corona. She not only changed the rules of everything anytime it fit her narrative. With us, she also did that with the parents, which led to misunderstandings every single day. So she asked the children, aged 4 to 10, which one had done an antigen test and who had a PCR test. Of course, the children didn't all know what this is, and a little 5-year-old girl raised her hand for the false one. When my boss noticed that, she gave this poor girl the scolding of her life and told her that she is dumb as a rock for not knowing the difference. Pretty sure this girl had spit in her face. I was so in shock, I probably should have slapped her for that, but I didn't. The girl tried hard to not cry and didn't come back the days after. The second incident was even more disturbing. A 4-year-old boy hit his head at the playground when they were all outside. I was back in the office when my colleagues came running. I called the boss while my colleague called the ambulance. When I told her that and how my colleague was already on the phone with the ambulance, she scolded me. But not because that boy got hurt, no, because we called the ambulance. In her world, it wasn't that bad and the father shouldn't find out, as if he was blind and wouldn't have seen the open wound anyway. The ambulance came and told us it was completely fine, even mandatory to call them in this case as an institution, and the boy suffered no further injury. He is fine now, thankfully. But I was furious. I was completely freaking out of anger. I'd only worked there for 9 days, and the kids as well as us had been abused enough. Instead of going after my impulse to call her back and tell her off, I calmed myself, and the next day, I didn't go to work, but to the doctor. I explained to her that my boss abuses me, but I can't terminate the contract early, so to keep me from snapping, she put me on a sick leave without end date. My boss was not amused when I sent her that doctor's notice, but I ignored her calls. I then proceeded to talk with my teammates and encouraged them to get sick leave and told them exactly what they can do and say to get that. They even tried to get rid of my Muslim coworker illegally. I explained to her that the paperwork from them is not legal and she should ignore it and also go on sick leave. So, in about a 2-week frame, my location had to replace all 6 people, including me, the boss there. And I took all the records home too, so she couldn't just pass them on, and also changed the password to my email account and did everything to tick her off. The story doesn't end here. As I found out, the word spread like wildfire, and because she was such a piece of crap to everyone at every location, 1 month after the start, she lost more than half of her staff. Some of them still had to be paid sick leave. Apparently, she called some of them and begged them to come back and offered bonuses as high as double the pay and still got nobody to come back to help. The silver lining was that the parents also had enough and many kids were taken out of that camp. So the end of July was here. I was on sick leave and she calls. She proceeds to tell me, suspiciously calm, that if I don't want to come back next month, I should tell her now, please, and she offered to end my contract without further obligations and with my payment for the whole month of July. I tell her about how I'm coming back because I really want to get better and other bullcrap. And of course, I just didn't, and I proceeded to collect 1 additional full month of sick leave without ever even speaking to her directly again. I also went out of my way to continue offering information for every single staff member of all locations that wanted to leave and still get paid or wanted to know where they can report her. So in the end, this is what she got for being a disrespectful witch. She lost half or more of her workers. Everyone hates her and wants nothing to do with her, really bad publicity included. She had to pay me the full 2 months, my vacation time out in money, which is quite expensive for them, as I didn't take it because I was so sick. Pay my overtime and the mandatory bonus you get for doing extra hours. All of this multiplied by 6 at least. I got around $6,000 for 9 days of work from them. Her entire enterprise went downhill. And of course, I also had to get my money through legal support, so that came on to her too. I can't explain how much detail I put in the legal planning, so to get all the people paid out as much as possible without any chance of legal repercussions ever. My butt is safer than safe. She will not ever be able to retaliate on what I did there. I studied law for a while and got everything double-checked by professionals. She tried to harass me, and I blocked her. But I heard she read my personal information to the other colleagues who stayed there and called me all possible names. So, if she should ever even try to sue me or blackmail me, I have evidence and witnesses for trying to dox me, insulting me, and various other things. Honestly, after I wrote that down now, I'm kinda proud, but also surprised at how nicely all of that worked out. I didn't see any listings searching for that project this year, so hopefully that went downhill, and I hope that she went back to heck where she came from, or became unemployed. Click my next crazy HOA Karen compilation on your screen to continue your listening session. Thanks for checking this one out, and see you in the next one.